You are listening to Candidate Conversations on the WIDU radio network. I'm your host, Jay Reinstein, and with me today I have Don Brown running for U.S. Senate as a Republican. Welcome to Candidate Conversations, Don.
Jay, it's an honor to be with you, and thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. So if you could just tell our listening audience just a little bit about yourself and maybe why you're running, and then we'll get to the real stuff here.
You gotcha. Well, I'm a native North Carolinian, born in Plymouth, North Carolina. I went to school at UNC Chapel Hill and Campbell Law School, served in the U.S. Navy as a JAG officer, then became a military author. We published 16 books altogether, 15 on the U.S. military, and have been involved very heavily with active duty and veterans since I've been out, working closely for 2 years with Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of War, worked on rules of engagement issues that disfavored our fighting forces in Afghanistan and Iraq in the last half of the War on Terror. Worked very closely with Pete Hegseth to secure a presidential pardon for Lieutenant Clint Lawrence, who was an 82nd Airborne paratrooper, stationed for a time there at Fort Bragg. Done some defense for J6 Patriots also, and I've had a pardon for Elliot Bechet, the youngest of the J6ers, who simply walked in the Capitol back. So I've been involved with a lot of matters. I've been involved with election integrity matters. Sidney Powell has endorsed our campaign. I worked on some of the issues dealing with the 2020 election irregularities, and I'll say that word generously, and have been endorsed by Lieutenant Mike Flynn, the former National Security, Lieutenant, let me get this right, the Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, former National Security Advisor of the United States, Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, former Delta Force Commander, Lieutenant General Boykin, and Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. So I'm a Navy guy, but we got a lot of support with the Army. My son is active duty in the Army, served in the 82nd, the 173rd Airborne. My dad was in Korea. And that's about it as far as I go that I can think of. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Great. Very impressive track record, and thank you for your service. Always got to thank folks for the service. Again, we're talking to Don Brown, running for U.S. Senate, Republican. So what would you say, Don, is the single biggest issue right now facing North Carolinians, and what would you do about it in your first year in the Senate? How would you address it?
Well, the most dangerous issue, I call it a ticking time bomb that affects all Americans and thus North Carolinians, is the out-of-control national debt. And President Trump has come into office and executed brilliantly, and with numerous executive orders. He was, ready to go from the very beginning. The military has been rebuilt. The morale has gone up. The execution of our forces, both in the Soleimani was 2019, but in the raid on Venezuela with Maduro and the action against Iran has been spectacular. But nonetheless, the national debt continues to explode. I was going up to Asheville about a month ago. Checked my timer. There is a website called usdebtclock.org. If you go there, and I would encourage all your listeners to do that, you will see the national debt exploding in front of your eyes. And I timed it for a minute. The debt exploded $2 million in 1 minute. That's like $37,000 a second. We don't get this debt under control, we're going to lose the dollar. And President Trump has said if we lose the dollar, that's worse than losing a world war. This is kind of a latent time bomb that most people aren't focusing on, and it's extremely serious. There are other serious issues as well. Medical freedom, I battle for that. I'm going to battle for our veterans. I think it's a crime that I think that the lowest ranked private in the Army or the Marine Corps is more important than the highest ranked member of the United States Congress. And I think it's just criminal that members of the Congress have superior health care to our veterans. I'm going to fight to change that. So there are many, many issues that are important to all of us. The national debt is a big one that we need to pay attention to. I'm the only Republican Senate candidate even bringing it up, not only just in North Carolina, but across the nation. I want to hit that hard because we can't afford to lose the dollar as international currency. We will drop as an economic superpower and will affect all of our standards of living. And we're going to work on the other issues as well. We want to protect seniors. Seniors should not have to pay tax on Medicare Part B. It's ridiculous, or even taxes at all on Social Security. Seniors have already paid that in. I don't like property taxes, My philosophy is the only good tax is a repeal tax. So there are a number of issues we're going to attack, but we're going to attack the national debt pretty hard. At least I will, and do the best I can to try to reverse this trend that we have.
Thank you, Don. And one of the things that I know you know and most people in America know, how divided this country seems right now. How would you work with people you strongly disagree with to deliver the results for North Carolina? Because that's definitely going to be a challenge.
Well, one of the things that I've tried to do, even in this campaign, is not to attack opponents on their personality, but rather to make our campaign issue oriented. Right now, Jay, we have more endorsements from conservative grassroots organizations. Now, get this, than from every other campaign, for every other candidate combined in this race. And the reason we're getting so many endorsements is because we're leading on issues, like I just discussed a moment ago, the national debt. To explain why it's dangerous, I'm discussing other issues, health care benefits for veterans that have been, and not just veterans, but spouses of veterans who, as far as I'm concerned, if you're a military spouse, you hear my voice, you're just as important as the active duty member. I'm going to lead with issues, and I wanted to discuss issues and not personality. And I think when we break our challenges down into challenges that are issue-oriented, we can do a better job of working together in a collaborative manner. And that's not always possible because sometimes the other side, because they don't like the issue you're pushing, are going to make it personal. But I want to lead with issues, with issue debates as much as I can, and explain what it is we need to bring down the cost of living, to bring down the cost of health care, which I think has been a disaster since Obamacare came into place, to bring down other costs. We brought some gasoline prices down over the last year. It's a good thing. We got more work to do. So let's talk about issues, and I think that's the key to trying to work with others on the other side to the extent the other side may want to work with us.
Great. Again, we're talking to Don Brown, running for U.S. Senate, North Carolina. He is a Republican. Talk about what's one vote or position you would be willing to break with your own party on if it benefits North Carolina?
Well, I would have to know specifically what that might be. I am a North Carolina first guy. I grew up in eastern North Carolina. I've lived here pretty much all my life except for my time in the military. I was in Virginia for a short period of time, but I will put North Carolina first, even if it means breaking with the Republican Party. I'm willing to do that. I went to vote today in Union County, and as I voted, I came out and held a voter ID and pointed out how the former governor, Roy Cooper, had been photographed with his voter ID, and it got on their social media. They took it down, and I made the point, listen, it's not just a voter ID that we need. We need proof of citizenship in U.S. voting. And then I called out John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, for not taking quick enough action on the SAVE Act. So I've not been hesitant at all to call out Republican leadership when I don't think they're helping the nation. I'm a Republican because of Republican ideals. Republican ideals deal with freedom. We don't have a democracy. We have a constitutional republic. Article 4, Section 4, this Constitution will give the states a Republican form of government. That's built on checks and balances to restrain government power. So what I'm saying is that I will break with Republican leadership when I think it's wrong. And one nice thing about running against the establishment, I've got the freedom to do that. Now, if you gave me a hypothetical potential vote, I'd be happy to comment on that. But right now, I'm willing to go against Republican leadership. I think we've got to go to war against the deep state and take these agencies out. And I think the Republican Party does not have a vision or a game plan to do that. And by the way, that's on the United States Congress. It isn't on President Trump because Article 1 of the Constitution makes the Congress responsible for taxing and spending. And we got a spending problem. Only Congress can deal with that, and we need to take some agencies out. So I will go against Republican leadership from time to time. I may vote with the Republican Party most of the time, but I don't hesitate to call a spade when a spade needs to be called a spade. And I will put North Carolina first. I'm kind of like really the 17th Amendment guy in some ways. Back before the 17th Amendment, senators were appointed directly. And my constituency is going to be the people of North Carolina, and I'll be working even closely with the North Carolina General Assembly. We've been to Raleigh, and I've been in this race for well over a year for U.S., and I've been at least 4 times to the General Assembly to talk to our leaders up there. I was there on the day that They came back to override several of the governor's vetoes. I was there in January when the Select Committee on Investigations, I believe that's the correct committee, called the Chapel Hill Carrboro School District on the carpet, watched those proceedings. So I want to work closely with our General Assembly and more closely with our people. The people of North Carolina are my priority, and I'm going to make that the case always as your next United States Senator.
Thank you so much, Don. Again, Don Brown, running for U.S. Senate, North Carolina, Republican. Many voters feel disengaged, that the system works for insiders and not for everyday people. How would your election to the U.S. Senate change that? Is there anything that you could push forward to make folks feel that they're being listened to?
Well, first of all, let me just say we're fighting a political machine. My campaign is we the people versus they the establishment. The money that we've raised are from average folks who work every day, who roll their sleeves up and go to work, firemen, policemen, accountants, school teachers, dance instructors, fishermen. That's who I represent. And one thing that we have done all year long for the last year, we've gone into almost every county in North Carolina. And I think it's important for our elected officials to spend off time visiting and having town halls in every, when I'm in the United States Senate, I'm not interested in going to wine and cheese parties in Georgetown and sipping champagne with whoever. I'm going to be amongst the people because the most powerful words of the Constitution are the first three, we the people. And elected representatives are to serve the people, not to go to Washington to get fat and happy and to get rich and famous, which unfortunately we see most of the time. I think you need to come home and you need to be with the people. And one thing that can help, to be honest with you, we have term limits for the President of the United States. The 22nd Amendment means that on January 20th, 2029 at high noon, we will have a new president. Might be J.D. Vance, might be somebody else. But you see that Congress and the nation put term limits on the president. Why would you do that on the president and not on the Congress? If you think about it, guys, if we had, say, a 2-term limit for the Senate, which I would favor, that would be 12 years. Joe Biden went into office in the same class as Jesse Helms. They were both elected in 72, went into the Senate in 73. If you had 2-term limits, Joe Biden would have gone out of the Senate in 1985, and you never would have heard from him again. So I will push for term limits, and I think that's one thing that will give our people more confidence in their government in Washington. The other thing is we simply have to reduce the number of federal agencies. The Democrat administration, first under Franklin Roosevelt with the New Deal and LBJ with the Great Society, passed all these legislations creating these 3-letter agencies, whether it's the EPA or the take your pick, the national, the EPA, the IRS. I mean, they go on and on and on. The ATF. And these regulations, these agencies, Jay, they make regulations which become the law. And for every law passed by Congress, these federal bureaucrats who are unelected pass 10 regulations. We got to take these agencies out so that our people are not burdened by what's going on in Washington. I was speaking up in the mountain counties not long ago, and a farmer came to me and said, hey, I can't even dig a ditch across my land because we got Department of Agriculture and EPA regulations that are blocking it because of the Endangered Species Act. And that is ridiculous. Or the Waters of the USA. That's another act. These acts are really shackling the hands of North Carolinians. And so I think you've got to cut the government in order to do that. I'm going to fight also to reduce a lot of the regulations that make it just more expensive for people to operate. The federal government buys up excess dairy off the grocery store racks, and when they buy it up, that keeps the price high. And stuff like that needs to be attacked. So we're going to work hard to pay attention to kitchen table issues. Folks are just trying to put their kids through school and make mortgage payments and pay the gas and a light bill and electric and have a little bit to go on vacation for. And a lot of problems have been the federal government's overreach has made it difficult to do that. So I'm going to be a champion for the working guy. I grew up in Plymouth, but one of my grandfathers lived in Martin County, and he was a small tobacco farmer and carried the mail. And I grew up working on the tobacco farm, priming tobacco, working in the barns. And so I know what it's like, and I will fight for our small farmers. And I grew up fishing on the Albemarle and Pamlico Sounds and in Oregon Inlet and in the Outer Banks. So I know what it's like, and I have a heart for our farmers and fishermen. I'm going to stand for our shrimpers in the eastern part of the state and for our recreational fishers as well. We just got to get, as President Reagan said, you got to get government off the backs of the people. And when you do that, freedom can flourish, and that's exactly what I'm going to be committed to do as your next United States Senator.
Thank you. Finally, if someone is still undecided, what should they know about you that sets you apart from your opponents, and how do folks learn more about you, Don?
I am a former naval officer. The two leading candidates in this race, me and Mike Watley, I'm the only guy with military experience. I've worked in the Pentagon, worked for the Secretary of the Navy. I've been involved as a constitutional lawyer. I was involved in military affairs issues and rules of engagement issues, protecting our fighting men and women in Afghanistan from reckless courts-martial. I have published 16 books on the U.S. military, including national bestsellers, spoken at the Reagan Library, the Nixon Library, and I've been all over the country, and I am better prepared to step in as your next senator more than anybody else, and a proven track record of conservatism, and can be reached. Our website is brown4nc.com. That's Brown, like my last name, for the word FORNC.com. People can come on board, shoot us an email. We'll take contributions. Like I say, this is a we the people candidacy against big money in Washington and out of state. And I'd say let's return this Senate seat to the people of North Carolina, the grassroots conservatives, the good, hard-working people who are solid-earth folks, and take it out of the hands of big money interest in Washington. If you want to do that, I'm your guy, and I will fight like never before, given the opportunity.
Thank you so much. We've been just talking to Don Brown, running for U.S. Senate, North Carolina Republican. Thank you so much for joining us today on Candidate Conversations.
Thank you, Jay. It's been a blessing and an honor to be with you.
All right, until next time, thank you.